Experiential education leads to a process of student-driven inquiry. Basically that the students, through hearing and relating to the people that they meet and the places that they are, start asking questions. I think that experiential learning is really powerful for the students of the traveling school because they are able to get a three-dimensional perspective on everything that they study. So when they're in their home high schools, they may read a textbook about economic theory and dollarization, and when they're here traveling, they're able to interview people, hear from all different perspectives, ranging from someone in the government to a campesina in the countryside, and ask them their perspectives on a particular subject, and then and to see its effects throughout the country and kind of draw their own conclusions. So I think it empowers them to think critically and to come to their own ideas about what they believe.
We want to show our students what is in that book and show them how much more history is than that.
I believe that in teaching history, or really in teaching any other subject, that we need to start where we are. We need to start with what's in front of us, and then from there sort of work out. And that may mean in history starting with what's happening now and continuing to ask the question, but why, which leads us to look back. In science, it may lead us from looking at a particular leaf to looking at a particular tree, to looking at a population, then to looking at an ecosystem, then to looking at the planet. So it leads us out as we continue to ask questions about why something is the way it is.
We are not saying, here's a reading, learn it, and then take a test. But instead we're saying, here's a reading for some background. Here's some people to talk to who've experienced this concept or experienced this event, or whose grandparents did. And here's this place itself, and do what you can to learn as much as you can about that. And then decide what you think is important. So in that way, we're bringing that to life in a way where it is relevant to the student, but they can't just read about it and leave it. They want to think about it. They want to talk about it. They want to ask why. And so that way, they're thinking critically at a level that they never get to in a regular high school experience.
A huge impactful moment for the entire group was when we were reading about the Guatemalan Civil War, and we were reading Bridge of Courage by Jennifer Harbury. And so there's a lot of testimonies in there of guerrillas that she interviewed personally. So we had read the whole first chapter, which is of how the guerrillas became motivated to enter the guerrilla team. And so then we were visiting a coffee finca. We just thought it was going to be about the kind of the economy of coffee and the ecology of the plantation. But so as we went through the tour, we stopped at a kind of a mirador, and our tour guide Wilma, we were eating bread in a circle, and she said something like, "Oh, this reminds me of when we used to eat in the mountains," and we're all we know what "in the mountains" means. We're kind of attuned to that, and it just broke open that she was a guerrilla for 13 years. She left when she was 21, and she told us about all her experiences, and being a woman was especially interesting. Being a woman as a guerrilla. She talked about being in combat. She talked about getting pregnant and having to secretly cross the border to Mexico so that she could give birth at a safe house. And then she talked about how she met Jennifer Harbury, and how Jennifer Harbury interviewed her, and how her testimony was in Bridge of Courage, and it was just history coming alive, and you just can't have that experience at home, and that's when the distance and the kind of the separation you can have from a textbook completely crumbled, and history came alive, and you're a part of it, and you couldn't help but have your heart in her story and in history.